Rockaways Productions presents The Casey Waters Show, episode 120. Carol and I discuss relationship dynamics. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Waters. Today or tonight, depending on where you are, I will discuss relationship dynamics. I'm going to discuss this with my friend Carol. This is a rare event in the Casey Waters Show. I don't have too many interviews. However, I do welcome the concept. It's actually easier to do a show when I have an interview. Things tend to flow along better, in the sense that it's easier to maintain continuity when you have two people talking as opposed to just a monologue. So, the Casey Waters Show currently airs in Anchorage, Alaska, New York City, and in Asheville, North Carolina. So, with no further ado, it's Carol and I discussing relationship dynamics.
So here we are back again at the Miracle Center, and now we're here with Robert. And Robert is one of Asheville's real fabulous geniuses, doing all kinds of interesting talk shows. So it's great to be here with you, Robert.
Well, it's great to be here with you, Carol.
Thank you.
And this section may be featured on my show. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
On the Casey Waters Show. That's my alias.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
So
right.
here tonight we're talking about the Course in Miracles, and we're sharing what the Course says about special relationships. What the Course says is that special relationships that set a limit, like, without you, Robert, I'm going to be miserable. That is not love, that's fear, because everyone has much to share with us.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting. I mean, because the thing is, from my past experience, when I fell in love, I often felt, compelled, at least in the beginning of the relationship, to set limits, on things that weren't acceptable or whatever.
Right.
And to kind of guide the relationship. But the thing is, you're right, you can't totally do that, and that's what I found out in the long haul. You have, after a certain point, you just have to let love free, in a sense, and let it be and see what happens. But sometimes it's hard to resist the temptation to control the relationship or restrict it or alter it so it works in your favor.
But in actuality, if we try to control anything, it doesn't work. We have to give everything freedom. Because freedom is our natural inheritance. So if I say to you, Robert, I love you so much. Now, if you like all those other people, I'm going to be miserable because I need all your love. And if you can't give me all your love, you're just not fulfilling my needs. But that's not the truth.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. That is what you're saying there. It makes a lot of sense.
Good.
And that's how I feel, because when you're talking about possession of someone, where I was talking about controlling their behavior, like if they had bad behavior, let's say they're an alcoholic or something, and you try to cause them to drink less or something like that.
Right.
Where you're talking about possessing someone in the sense of restricting their relationships with other people, which are basically benign or basically beneficial to them.
Of course.
And because they're beneficial to them, I readily recognize that. And so pretty much in all my relationships, I gave that freedom
Oh, that's wonderful.
to whoever my partner
That shows your
was at the
intelligence.
time or is at the time,
Right.
to have the freedom to be with who they want to be, visit who they want to visit, and so on and so on, and even be attracted
Of
to
course.
who they want to be attracted to, even in a romantic way. You gotta allow a little room.
Yeah.
You know, as I said before, you gotta like set love free, and it will come back to you. But you gotta allow it that roaming room, because if you try to be too possessive, then the relationship typically fails because the other partner gets rebellious, which makes sense.
Of course.
It makes total
The
sense.
Course in Miracles, which is channeled by Jesus, says that to set a limit is not love. If I really love you, like the way a mother loves a child, she can't say, you can have as many friends as you want. The more happy you are, the happier the mother is.
That's
Truthfully.
right.
Well, we need to be unconditional loving with everyone.
Yeah.
Because every single person has a gift to offer you. But if I say, I'm so busy with my special relationship up here, I have no time to listen to you or to connect to you in any way, I am missing out.
Actually, you're right. And that's so true. When you have a possessive relationship, you could have that problem.
Yes, because it feels so good to be with your special relationship.
Yeah, and
But the Course in Miracles says, and it's a wonderful thing, that all relationships under God's teaching through the Course in Miracles, every relationship becomes a relationship of love. That doesn't mean that you go to bed with these people. Love does not have to be sexual. Love can be an understanding.
Yeah, a relationship and
of
that's,
communication.
Of communication. And then when you have someone who is restrictive, if you have that someone who's restrictive of the other partner, then not only does the other partner lose out, but the person being restrictive loses out because they don't have interaction with other people too, and they often restrict themselves. Often they might see it as a divide, saying, we're together now, this is the present and the future, and the past is the past and it's not part of us. But of course that's not true. The past is a part of us, just like the present is. And you have to incorporate your past, especially the positive elements and the positive relationships. So that open element is important.
Yes. And what the Course in Miracles teaches is that every single person has something to teach you. So if you limit yourself, like I'm only interested in you, I will not learn what's really all to learn. Each person has a special gift for you. And so as you allow yourself to get to know all the people and know that they're going to share something with you that is truly going to enhance your life, you have to have that kind of freedom. And you have to give this freedom to whoever you love. Because love is freedom, it's not bondage.
It's not bondage, and you want your partner to do the best that they could do.
And have fun.
And have the most potential and the most fun, and so that means not being restrictive. And everybody has something to offer, and even people who are contrary to your belief systems or contrary to your typical behavior or contrary to the activities you like, even people like that typically have something to offer, and you could often learn from them. Even your enemies can be your best teacher, as there's one of the sayings of Buddhism, that your enemy is your best teacher. So you have to really maintain that open element.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
You don't have to conform unduly to anything, but you just have to be open to it, to allow it space and allow the interaction with you and whoever, just to see what will happen, just to, quote, give the situation a chance.
And it's absolutely divine to be with people who disagree with you, because if everyone agrees with all your ideas, they would just be saying yes, yes, yes. How boring is that? It is far more interesting if we disagree, because what you believe and what I believe, somehow if we discuss it, we can come to a better understanding. A place in the middle, perhaps. Perhaps some of your ideas and my ideas would bring us to a better place.
Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely right.
But to truly love somebody, you do not have to agree with everything they think. We can agree to disagree.
You're right. We could agree to disagree, and that makes sense because it's very hard to find a perfect match where you find someone who's truly like you. And if you did, it might get boring.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you might actually grate on each other's nerves because you're too similar. So it's good to have the diversity, and you learn from each other from the diversity, and it's really important to have the tolerance and acceptance of the other person's viewpoints, attitudes, activities, and whatnot. And that way the relationship could flourish better.
Yes.
And of course, if you give room to your partner, of course, in theory, your partner should give you room.
Of course.
And so then you have benefit too. All right. Well, we're just going to take a little break for a moment, and we may continue.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And if you have any questions, please do call us. We love to chat with you.
My number will be displayed at the end of this program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vote yes for hemp, darling.
Well, I'm back. I hope you have enjoyed that section. So now we move along. Well, basically in the same direction, continuing to discuss relationship dynamics. However, we're going to try to pick up an element which I recently discussed. That is the great independent. Being able to have independent thinking instead of being unduly influenced by others. The problem is, if you're unduly influenced by others, you might be more vulnerable and more insecure and feel less confident about your identity, and you might feel more uncertain about who you really are. This all applies if you're readily influenced by other people, in the sense that they influence your value systems or your hobbies or other activities of your lives. The great independent, as they call it, are people, great independents, are people who hold the ground more and are influenced by society as a whole and their family and close friends less. They're not so easily influenced, even by family and close friends. They have to evaluate everything in terms of their own value system, which they form by evaluating the world as a whole and everything as a whole. Keep in mind when you're doing this great independent thing, of course, it is best to start with a very wide base to evaluate yourself against. In other words, if you're in an isolated community, or you don't have much interaction with people, or you're limited because of your culture, this could be a little more tricky doing it properly and truly having a proper independent neutral stance. What could happen, of course, in those situations is you might be unduly influenced by the situation you're in, your culture, your town, or whatever. But you can still make strides anyway. Don't be discouraged. It will still be better than being unduly influenced. As I said, when you're unduly influenced by everybody around you, you lose your identity, you become more uncertain and more disillusioned readily and more vulnerable. When you have a more independent stand, you have less of those qualities to worry about. You have more continuity in your life, and you're able to deal with change better. In fact, if you are so good at this, you reach the state of farewell, in the sense of goodbye. This is a very important concept, which I learned one night during meditation. The farewell. And that night, I was trying to say farewell to smoking cigarettes. But I realized the concept, of course, was much larger. You could say farewell to anything, anyone, any situation, and sometimes you have to, in the sense of death of a close family member, let's say. Sometimes you have no choice. But sometimes you might want to say farewell because it's a bad situation. And sometimes it's, things change. You move to a new town or whatever, and you have to say farewell. The concept of farewell, the concept of taking nothing for granted, the concept of you and me, everybody, are entitled to almost nothing. That's right. You're entitled to almost nothing. And the less you expect, the less you'll be disappointed. If you feel you're entitled to everything, especially if your sense of entitlement is exaggerated in your favor, in the sense that you're greedy and feel you deserve everything, when in fact you might not, it could lead to serious disillusionment in the future. Especially, here you are, people who are meek and readily intimidated. Pay attention to the rest of this section. Here's how it goes. Here's the common situation. The situation where the people who are meek and the people who are neurotic are less favored, and they are the losers. So, for you meek and neurotic people to win out in your goals, pay attention carefully here. Anyway, here's how it goes. There's a very common pattern that pervades across, probably across all cultures and perhaps all times, where you have character disorder people and neurotic people. These are classifications done by psychologists, and everybody fits into one of the two sides. There are very few people who are right, balanced, perfectly in the middle, and are neither character disorder or neurotic. If you are neurotic, you blame things on yourself that might not be your fault. You take responsibility for more than you should. I guess I'm a little neurotic myself, I guess. But anyway, the good news for us neurotic people are we are easy to work with psychotherapists. And often we can make progress that way. Unfortunately, you might be stuck in a relationship, you neurotic, meek person, into a dominant person who has a character disorder with an inflated sense of entitlement and an inflated ego. This could create problems, okay? Here's how it goes. Person with a character disorder, they blame their problems on you and other people and the world at large, and situational things. They don't take responsibility for much. They take less responsibility than they should. But they might act responsible and pretend to be responsible. Typically, this might be a strong, aggressive male who likes to intimidate people. Perhaps his coworkers, perhaps his wife, perhaps his children. Anyway, of course, the intimidating person could be a female as well. You know who the intimidator person is. The intimidating person blames their problems on you. The intimidating person wants to be in control. They want to manipulate things in their favor. often at your expense. You, being meek and neurotic, who might love this person with the character disorder, or they might be your parent or whatever, you have to put up with them and suffer for years and years under this intimidation. Is there a way to break free? Sure there is. You have to negotiate. You have to stick up with yourself. Form an alliance. Get friends and other family members with you. The more the merrier. In a very compassionate way, talk to the person with the character disorder who has an inflated sense of ego, who feels they're entitled to more than they're entitled to, and who wants to control the situation. Talk to him or her. Find out what their problems are, what bothers them, and in a very gentle way, slowly lead up to their faults and their major mistakes and the suffering that they put you through. Have your friends and family chime in like a chorus through this part. Do it again and again. Sometimes the relationship will end, if it is a relationship, over this. And you, the meek person who is neurotic, will be very broken-hearted if it's a relationship. And there's a good chance that the next relationship you end up with will be in a person who's much the same, unfortunately, who's another character disorder person who is abusing you and dominating you too much. And you might, in fact, go through a whole series of these awful relationships, shedding each one because it becomes too adverse. You have to stick up for yourself and change your ways if that is the case. And try not to be so gullible and so intimidated so easily. Stick up for yourself. Do your research. Talk to other people. Find out what they're up to. Tell them your problems. Get them to understand your side. Talk to the people. They or he or she, the intimidating person or force, tells you not to talk to. That's the person you should talk to, chances are. But do it discreetly when they don't know. And talk to lots of other people outside of your conflict entirely. And get their neutral judgment. And yet use their opinion heavily. Hopefully this will guide you through adverse situations and get you out of your current adverse relationship. Because you can do it. Remember, there are lots of people who are willing to help. Remember, you have more friends than you know. They will assist you. Pray for God for assistance and err on the side of caution. Now let's move to the next section. What is it? Well, we're going to go back to the imaginary territories and discuss what it is that makes them appealing. Sure, I guess to most of you all, it probably is pretty nonsensical and inane, a little silly, a little stupid, and probably boring. But for me, they're much different. For me, they're all the opposite. Their excitement, their dynamic, their joy, their energy, they're wonderful. Sure, at least for me, as I experience my imaginary territories. I could just tap into it, so to speak. Sure I can. Been able to for quite some time, I guess, for most of my life. So, tapping into this, feeling, well, my value system, and feeling that there's people on my side. Remember this section I just talked about, getting out of adverse relationships. There's people on your side, physically and metaphysically. There's people or beings or energies or angels or God or all of the above on your side on the spiritual metaphysical plane, ready to assist you. The imaginary territory is at work. Sure, their actions are typically never noticed or seldom noticed, but that doesn't mean they're not there, and that doesn't mean they might have a profound effect on our lives. We're just unaware of it. That is my assumption. For certainly we affect them, for there's nothing left. Remember, this is the spiritual realm here. There's no materiality, no body, no time. What have you got? Think about it. You don't have too much. You might have some memories of what your life was like, and you might have a sense of union with God, a sense of compassion and love, and all that. Sure. But what does that do? It helps generate your value system and helps generate who you are. Don't forget it. That's where you come from. That's where we all come from the womb of God, the womb of compassion and love. So, we have to remember that. And I guess that's where I feel all the love and joy and energy and all that stuff. And the sense that I'm not alone, that I have powerful forces working with me, not against me, because I'm on God's side, in theory. Of course, not all the time. I guess I'm astray against God plenty often too, of course. But I like to be optimistic, and I like to think that I'm on God's side, and vice versa. And perhaps with just that optimism might be enough to set me off in the right direction, and using the right value system too, that encourages compassion and love, wisdom, kindness, justice, and in fairness, and sharing of information and non-deception. Where other value systems might be more deceptive, might be such that they encourage taking advantage of people and encourage to do everything for your sense of pride and your personal wealth. Well, that's not always where it's at, of course. And your fame and your social status. It's not all what it comes down to. No, it's not you. It's the exact opposite. It comes down to everyone else. Think about it. You are just an individual. Everyone else is the world, minus you. So, wouldn't you rather have everything go better for them, everybody else, instead of everything going better for you and your inflated ego and your excessive pride and your excessive sense of entitlement to money, position, fame, or whatever you're after? Perhaps you need to limit all that. Remember, you're entitled to nothing. Remember, farewell. You always could say goodbye, in theory, to almost anything. If you're like that, and then that makes you more powerful. Why? Because you can adjust to changing situations better. Where people who feel they are entitled will suffer more when situations change and they lose what they're entitled to and they have to give up what they love. If you're ready to give it up mentally, emotionally, it'll be a little easier when it comes.
Casey Waters Show. Producer, Casey Waters. Graphic editing, Judson Laird. Please note our new email address, CaseyWaters2 at caseywaters.com.